So the California Faculty Association Union, which represents faculty in the CSU system, has claimed that the CSU system has done little to improve expenditures to focus on faculty salaries. They did a study in this paper known as Race to the Bottom, CSU's 10-year failure to fund its core mission, where they've done an average between faculty of UC's professors and CSU. A professor working at UC San Francisco, in a 10-year span, they rose their salary by $16,000 versus CSU professors have actually lost a decrease of $9,000 in a 10-year span. The California Faculty Association has been negotiating with the CSU on a new bargaining agreement where they originally wanted a 5% faculty increase for compensation. However, the CSU system counteroffered with a 2% due to the fact that other bargaining agreements with staff members, management, and executives are currently receiving a 2% salary increase on their new bargaining agreement. The CFA has threatened a 5-day strike that fortunately was reverted with the new tentative agreement. The CSU has actually agreed on the new tentative agreement, actually allocating a 10% salary increase for faculty members within the next 3 fiscal years. The first 7% would be taken in 2 days, June 30th and July 1st, and then the remainder for the 10% would be taken within the next 2 fiscal years. With such a huge increase of funding that would be required for these compensation packages, how would the CSU actually cover these costs? My major claim for this is that the CSU system actually lacks fiscal resources to support the new CFA tentative bargaining agreement without compromising its budget and fiscal stability. I'll be talking about the current recession recovery that we're currently experiencing. I'll also be talking a little bit about the operating reserves that the CFA would like to withdraw to cover the funds, and also our current budget that's actually proposed for the upcoming school year. As you all know, 2007 through 2014, we have struggled through a recession. Governor Brown, at its peak of the recession in 2011, slashed about $500 million in the CSU system. And actually, the CSU system had to come up with a budget deficit and actually eliminate a reduction of 40,000 students. So 40,000 students were prevented from continuing their education due to these budget cuts. The New York Times supports this claim through an article. Moreover, as part of the restructural of the budget through the budget deficit, the CFA actually approved furlough days into the school system, as well as approved pay cuts, staffing reductions to kind of alleviate the budget cuts. The former head of the CFA, Lillian Tays, actually mentioned in the article, it was an antagonizing decision to do these budget cuts. However, many faculty members made the sacrifice for the good of their colleagues and the good of the university. Now that we're kind of coming out of the recession and recovering, we're seeing a huge increase in student population. This past school year alone, we welcomed over 126,000 students into our CSU campuses, which will only increase the need to improve in our infrastructure and student support services to accommodate this population. The CFA has made a claim that we do have the funds to cover this, the tentative agreement by withdrawing funds of our operating reserves. However, our operating reserves are actually under strict state regulations and guidelines to maintain. Every public system needs to maintain at least a 2 to 3% operating reserves that is allocated from whatever the expenditure budget is for that year. They have guidelines for which the CSU must follow. These guidelines are as follows. Reserves should never be used to make up for unexpected revenue shortfalls. They should never be budgeted to address structural deficits or to overcome overspending, which this would be kind of like a qualifying thing. This is kind of an unexpected expenditure that would go towards the budget. And then these reserves should only be used in emergency situations and should not be used as a source of flexible funding for new opportunities that were not first anticipated in the budget. With that in mind, we also have to look into our current proposal for the budget of the next year. Governor Jerry Brown is actually allocating a 2.9% increase into higher education, especially the CSU system, with a total of $6.4 billion being allocated into the system. This is the first year that the CSU has actually gained full support for the proposals. However, it only allocates that 2% faculty salary increase. So the funds would have to come out from a different type of funding, whether it's going to be, taking some funding sources from another budget line item, or seeking other revenue sources to cover that. The CSU stands against its ground from creating a structural deficit due from what it's learned through the recession and trying to maintain fiscal stability. So in conclusion, I stand really strongly on my claim that the CSU has no resources available to maintain that 10% faculty increase without compromising the budget, because we're learning still and recovering from the recession. We do have operating reserves that cannot be withdrawn willy-nilly without, for a good purpose. And then our current budget proposal doesn't support it. We would have to seek funding through other sources, which could probably be increased fees and tuition, or sacrificing another budget line item.
All right, Carlos, it takes you 2 minutes to get to the proposition. There's a lot of setup and background, and I understand that some of that's going to be necessary so that we understand the context of what you're talking about. But you're a third of the way into the speech before you get to your argument. When you provide a preview, the supporting points really are not really phrased as claims. They're just pieces of data that you're hanging the information on. They need to be making declarative statements along the way. Now, I think it's easy to detect kind of where your argument is here, that we have been in economic tough shape, that the proposed increases are not really paid for under the existing budget, and that any change that we make is going to have significant ramifications to the budget. That's basically the summary of your argument, and I think you've got good a good idea there. Why they're not phrased as declarative sentences, I'm not sure, because you've got the right stuff there for an argument, but you're kind of treating it like it's a bug under a glass that you're examining here, instead of a claim that you're making, a position that you're taking on the argument. And you need to use those declarative statements so we know what the argument is on that point. There's good factual data in the presentation that you cite pretty consistently. I do think you need more information about what the restrictions on the current budget are, so that shows why we can't access this information, to pay for these increases. It does sound like some of your argument got altered a little bit by the preliminary agreement, the tentative agreement that solves those sorts of things. So maybe that kind of forced you to focus and reorganize your argument to some degree. So that might be the explanation about what's going on there. I thought it was nicely delivered, and I think that you've got a good understanding of the concept here. Like I said, I just think you need to make your argument a little bit more forcefully and directly, instead of providing all of this historical context and background information, which is, some of it's relevant to the argument, but some of it is just like it's an informative speech without the claims, and you need to make the claims. All right. That's where we're going.